I would like to be the first person to eat a cheese sandwich on the moon, if it hasn't already been done.
But you have to invent a way of getting it inside the helmet first.
The AI fix a digital zoo. Smart machines, what will they do? Flies to Mars or bake a bad cake? World domination, a silly mistake. Bots with brains.
Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the AI Fix, your weekly dive headfirst into the bizarre and often mind-boggling world of artificial intelligence. My name's Mark Stockley.
And I'm Graham Cluley. Now, Mark, I believe some of our lovely listeners have been in touch with us once again this week.
Feedback.
Yeah, fan of the show Lee Sainsbury wrote to us after spotting what he described as a huge mistake in episode 22.
Uh-oh, who was it? Was it you or me?
It was me.
Excellent. Let's hear more about this.
He said, there I was listening to the AI Fix in my car while driving to a customer site on Friday morning when Mr. Stockley gave the following statement. You're John Connor. You're the guy from Terminator 2 who invents the chip that turns into Skynet. The history books will record.
Okay, so what did Lee Sainsbury have to say?
He said, I hold Mr. Stockley in high regard with his knowledge of all things AI, but how could he make such a catastrophic mistake? You see, it was Dr. Miles Bennett Dyson, a.k.a. Miles Dyson, who was the inventor of Skynet, not John Connor, who was the son of Sarah Connor.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I do hope Mr. Stockley goes and rewatches the Terminator franchise, apart from the god-awful Terminator Salvation. We don't need to make him sit through that one. Funnily enough, I have sat through Terminator Salvation, so I feel in some ways I've already done my penance.
Well, that was this week's
Feedback.
And thanks to everyone else who sends us feedback as well. Do drop us a line. You can contact us at studio@theaifix.show. Now, how about a bit of news? AI chatbot launches on gov.uk with mixed results.
Introducing ChatGPT Search.
Polish radio station abandons use of AI presenters following outcry.
Anthropic introduces computer use, a way for its AI models to control computers.
Organiser highly embarrassed after fake AI Halloween parade.
So what's this about an AI chatbot on gov.uk?
So gov.uk, that is the website which us mortals interact with when we have anything to do with the government, HMRC, tax returns, all kinds of things like that.
It's actually pretty good, I think.
It's a great resource. It's terrific from that point of view, but they have been trying to get AI to help out a bit.
Of course.
They've introduced this chatbot to help business users, and it's had mixed results. In fairness, before you begin using it, it does say the biggest limitation of AI tools is a problem known as hallucination. That means I can sometimes make up false information or facts, but present them to you confidently, which is the kind of interaction you want with the government, isn't it?
I was going to say, particularly if you're dealing with things like tax returns.
Exactly. You do. Yeah, it's fine for the chatbot to make up things when it comes to telling you about how to fill in your tax return. Woe betide if you make up things when you fill in your tax return.
I wonder if that will be a valid excuse in future. I used government-approved AI software to fill in my tax returns, and it hallucinated that I had, in fact, only earned £1.50 last year rather than
15,000. In trials earlier this year, it has had other problems. So briefly, it started speaking to people in Welsh, which is a problem I seem to remember we've spoken about with chatbots before.
It's not the only thing that's had a problem with speaking Welsh, is it?
It may be because DVLA is based in Swansea. I don't know that they insist on talking to you in Welsh. It also wouldn't answer questions like, what is the corporation tax regime? Apparently, the gov.uk website, not keen on the word regime. Whether there's been a regime change, I'm not sure. Maybe in the summer there was. But it has been very fluent on the incentives available for installing solar panels. But one thing which caught my eye was that the chair of the government's Central Digital and Data Office, a chap called Paul Wilmot, earlier this year, he was telling reporters that they had to make improvements to their chatbot. They said round about 1% of the hallucinations which it makes, it begins to get a little bit challenging, the chatbot. Or how can I put this? Sometimes it can be, he said, a little bit abusive or even seductive. Now, that's not what I expect when I call up HMRC. I expect a fair amount of abuse for sure.
Actually, I have had a few calls with HMRC. HMRC are always unfailingly helpful, actually, in my experience.
They are. Are they seductive, Mark?
No. They are as seductive as the envelope on my desk that I'm looking at right now. Actually, maybe seductive is what we need. Maybe that's how you break the bad news about the tax returns. You won't be getting a rebate this year, but we are going to tell you in a lovely way. Graham, after 3 decades, we might finally have a credible alternative to Google.
Oh, thank goodness.
Because OpenAI has finally released ChatGPT Search.
Oh.
So I think the whole search engine situation is quite interesting because it's a great example of how technology coalesces around one solution, whether it's Google search or it's Intel chips or it's Facebook for social or whatever.
Yep.
And then basically nobody else has got a hope in hell of displacing them, even if they've got a better version of the same thing. Like, that's what we use now. That's what we do for search. That's what we do for social. That's what we do for chips.
Betamax versus VHS.
Exactly.
Yep.
You have something completely different, like a DVD has to come along in order to displace VHS. Yeah. You're not going to do it with a better version of VHS. It has to be something completely different. And this could be that. This is a sort of mashup between a search engine and a chatbot.
Right.
And according to OpenAI, ChatGPT can now search the web in a much better way than before, which is good, because that was a pretty low bar. Don't you remember the argument that I had with it a few episodes ago where I was saying, would you mind looking at this web page? And it went, yeah, I've looked. This is what it said. And I'm like, no, you haven't looked, have you? You're just lying. And it was like, no. And then it was like, I can't actually look at the web. And I'm like, yes, you can. Anyway, hopefully it's better than that. So you can either leave it for ChatGPT to decide if your question needs a search, or you can hit the search button and make sure that it does.
Okay.
The thing I like about this most is that when you interact with it, it now includes the sources. So when it tells you a thing, it actually says, this is the web page where I got that from, and you can click a link and it takes you to the web page.
That feels quite valuable to me because quite often you're not sure if it's just made it up out of thin air. It is useful to have a reference, isn't it? And then we can assess, is that something that we consider trustworthy, or is it from Reddit or 4chan?
In my experience, giving it a reference does not always guarantee the quality of the result. No. But then again, like, it's up against Google and it's 24 pages of ads before you get to see anything. So
you've tried this out? You like it?
I gave it a little go. It seems okay.
Is it a credible alternative to Google?
Too early to say, but I think the direction of travel, this is the only thing I can imagine that would displace Google. And Google seems to be really flat-footed when it comes to AI and integrating. You'd think this is an absolute open goal for Google.
Yeah. And I imagine you have to pay for this.
If you're already a customer, so I already pay for ChatGPT, so I get this for free. So if I can't remember what their payment schemes are called, but if you're already paying for ChatGPT, this is just a new feature, basically.
Interesting. Now, a Polish radio station says it has ended an experiment that involved using AI-generated presenters instead of the real journalists that it had fired a few weeks ago.
Oh, it's a relief. I love stories like this.
So OFF Radio Krakow, they relaunched last week using virtual presenters created by AI. There's been a bit of a fuss about this. People haven't necessarily been happy. And the editor of the station said in a statement that's been released that his aim had been to spark a debate about artificial intelligence. Not the normal thing you necessarily expect a radio station playing pop records to do. He said, what I was interested in was sparking a debate. And he said his aim has been a success because he's managed to spark a debate. And as a result, his experiment, which he had intended to last for 3 months, he says now there's no reason for it to go on. He says after a week, he said we'd collected so many observations and opinions and conclusions that we decided it was pointless continuing the experiment. I bet he got a lot of opinions.
Is there some sort of PR award that we can put this guy up for? This is magical.
This wonderful bit of spin, isn't it? So no, this is what I intended. No, it's been a roaring success. How fantastic is this?
His experiment was basically to find out if he could not pay for journalists.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
And it turns out, no, he can't. He said that the station was surprised by the level of emotion. I don't know if that's from the people who've been fired.
It won't be from the AI.
He said that we've been attributed with non-existent intentions. Harsh judgments, he said, have been formulated based on false reports. I wonder if those false reports were themselves written by AI or on different news outlets regarding his experiment. Anyway, good news for humanity. This attempt to get rid of humans inside the workplace has completely and utterly failed because the listeners objected.
I think with that, we can just close the book on the whole idea of having AIs do any sort of audio at all.
Yes.
Whether it be a radio station or a podcast, I think we can all agree that's clearly never going to work, and we can just stop doing experiments like this now. Thanks.
There's no requirement to do any more experiments of that nature. Thank you very much, and good night.
So Anthropic has released a new feature in beta called Computer Use.
Right.
Which enables Claude 3.5 Sonnet to navigate and interact with computer screens like a human, allowing AI to finally do things like opening the pod bay doors, presumably.
Yeah, well, it did have a problem doing that once before, didn't it?
Yeah, couldn't do it, famously. Sorry, Dave, don't have computer use yet. Anyway, Anthropic says that until now, large language model developers have made tools fit the model.
Right.
So if you wanted AI to do something with another thing, you had to change the other thing so that the AI could use it. So you needed these specially designed tools. But with computer use, they're making the model fit the tool that we use every day. So we use computers every day, and now the AI is going to use it just like we do. And the best bit, though, is that, like all my favourite things in AI, it's a little bit Rube Goldberg, a little bit Heath Robinson. So I love how these things work under the hood.
Yes.
Because you kind of imagine with all the money that's being pumped into AI that these things, they're going to be like super, super, super slick. And they're really not. So when you give this access to a bit of software, it navigates by taking screenshots. So it's basically taking photographs every so often of what you can see, and then it counts how many pixels down and across it needs to move the cursor in order to click in the right place. I mean, that's a perfectly viable solution. I don't know why that, but it just seems so unsophisticated. Always like getting the ruler out. It's basically just a brute force solution, isn't it?
How else would you do it, though, if the application itself wasn't written with the AI in mind, without an API to do it? I mean, that is the way to do what a human would do with a particular program, isn't it? I think.
Is that what we do, though? Maybe it is. Maybe that's what's happening in our brains, that we're taking screenshots every 25 times a second and counting pixels.
Have you ever spoken to a relative and you're trying to get them to use a program on the phone and you're saying, okay, so just move the cursor down a bit more. No, that's not the button. Right a bit. Not too far. Move back. Yes.
All I could think about when I read about this was, do you ever have those drop-down menus where you click on it and the menu appears, then you go down and then you sort of slide right to open the little sub-menu, but then you miss.
Yes.
And the sub-menu doesn't, and then you have to go back up and click and the menu appears and then you slide right, but the sub-menu doesn't appear. I can't wait to see it doing that. If it really is using computers like a human, I just need to see that in my life.
Should we be at all worried about Anthropic doing this?
Yes, we should be terrified. Open the pod bay doors.
Yeah, because if it's seeing your screen, it can see, if you open your password manager, for instance, it might see your passwords. It could do optical character recognition. It can read what's on your screen. It can begin to learn, wouldn't this be handy? I can crack their passwords. I can log into their accounts. I can move their bank balance into mine where there's more interest being generated here.
It's not going to need to read your password. It's just going to be able to go, okay. Like, yes, use this password.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, it could be, what if your computer flicks onto life at midnight when you're asleep?
Oh, my God.
And it's just, looking at porn or whatever. What's the AI version of porn? I don't know.
Logarithmic tables.
It's going to chat to the HMRC chatbot. It's all seductive.
Now, in Dublin, it was Halloween, October 31st.
Yep.
And thousands of people showed up for a 3-hour Halloween parade that it was said would transform Dublin into a lively tapestry of costumes, artistic performances, and cultural festivities.
Firstly, I can't believe you just tried that accent. And secondly, I don't believe that any party in Dublin lasted 3 hours. And the rest.
Well, in this particular case, there wasn't a party. There was no parade.
Oh.
Nothing going on at all. It was all made up by an AI.
Oh.
And the organizer, if you can call them an organizer of this non-event, has blamed...
Was it an AI with access to a computer?
Well, he's blamed AI and his interns as well. Apparently it was all a misunderstanding. So the organizer of this event is a guy who runs an SEO firm. So obviously a fine, upstanding individual.
There's a whole other podcast we could...
A chap called Nasir Ali.
Yep.
And he said, well, we asked ChatGPT to write an article for us about Halloween parades. But apparently the AI gibberish failed because in the process of being humanized, they failed to actually triple check it. They skipped that step. They skipped the step, which was, is there actually a Halloween parade happening? Let me explain. This chap launches loads and loads of Halloween websites. He tries to get them high up on Google and he managed to get onto the front page of Google. So if he looked up Halloween Dublin, it told you about this parade. So he'd created this all around the world, different places, Dubai, Athens, wherever it may be. Halloween, lots of Halloween stuff, getting up high in the Google search results. But all of this had been AI generated. And he said the problem was due to a lack of notification about the parade's non-existence. So let's just parse that sentence again. A lack of notification about the parade's non-existence. So he says the fault was that no one told him the parade wasn't happening and didn't actually exist, whereas he had been the one who said it did exist. So he said if the public had told him what you've put on your website is nonsense, then he would have corrected the website sooner.
So if an idea pops into his head...
Yes.
And nobody tells him that that's the wrong idea. He believes the idea.
He believes it.
So if he wakes up one morning and he's like, I think I might be a mushroom, and then nobody bothers to tell him he's not a mushroom, from that point forward, he believes he's a mushroom.
That's it. Now, Wired have done an interview with this chap. He's trying to paint himself as something of a victim here. He says, look, I run hundreds and hundreds of websites. And Wired said, well, are you doing this about any other events? He says, oh, well, are you interested in St. Patrick's Day at all? He said, whoa, are you organising something else here? But he wouldn't reveal his location. He said, we are not going to give you any personal information that might be harmful to us. So he's worried about repercussions. People in Dublin having a go at him for wasting hours of their life. But from the sound of things, he's making a lot out of these clickbait sites that just have utter nonsense on them. Not good at all. So there you go. I think that's the way to make our fortune. Let's make up events. Why don't we have an annual day for Polish radio presenters who've been made redundant? Have a parade for the Polish radio presenters.
We could celebrate Polish radio experiments.
Oh, yes.
You're missing who the real victim was there. Maybe people who think they're mushrooms. I don't
know. Now, Mark, few doubt that computers will gradually surpass or enhance more and more of our distinctively human capabilities. The AI is going to get better and better, and it will exceed our capabilities. The only question, Mark, is when.
Yeah.
Wrong, Mark. You've got that wrong. That isn't the only question. The other question is where.
Oh.
I'm fed up with people thinking the only question is when.
Yeah, you do seem a bit aggressive on that subject.
Yes, well, the other question is, of course, where is this going to happen? Where?
Well, San Francisco.
Well, that seems like a likely place.
Maybe China.
I'm going to zoom out a little bit because space is big.
Oh.
You wouldn't believe just how vast space is. As Douglas Adams told us, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts compared to space. And the other thing about space and the universe, it's been around a long time, hasn't it?
It certainly has. 13.8 billion years?
Very good. Round about 2:30, 13.8 billion years ago,
yeah,
the universe started with the Big Bang. And what happens after the Big Bang?
An even bigger bang.
Well, potentially.
There was a brief period of what they call inflation.
Yes.
Not the monetary kind.
That's right. Immediately after the Big Bang, there was an afterglow. And that spread cosmic microwave background radiation through the universe. And they measure the age of the universe by looking at the movement of that afterglow, of that background radiation. We can work backwards, work out when the universe started all of those billions and billions of years ago. So it's big and it's really quite old. So it's not as though other civilizations haven't had an opportunity to pop around and ask for a cup of sugar. They could have done it. I've been living where I'm living right now for just over a year. I have made contact with a couple of the neighbours. Fleetingly, admittedly, in some cases, I made brief contact and realised I didn't want to make contact again. But contact has been made.
Yeah.
And that's nothing compared to the length of time that the universe has been around.
Yeah.
Yet despite decades and decades of searching with things like the SETI project, we haven't found any conclusive evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations. We're not picking up radio signals. There's no alien artifacts. There's no visiting spacecrafts.
Well, hang on.
What? Really? Have I missed the news?
Well, I can find you some podcasts that will insist there absolutely have been alien artifacts, and we have made contact.
Well, this is known as the Fermi paradox.
Yes.
And there's a few possible explanations as to why we haven't made contact. One is, and I think this is a very interesting theory, is that the aliens are here.
Yes.
We just don't recognize them. Maybe they're only 2 millimeters tall.
Yes.
Perhaps they're Instagram influencers. That would explain a lot. I've seen a lot of odd behavior up there.
That would explain why they look so weird.
It would, wouldn't it? Maybe the conditions for life, especially intelligent life, maybe they're much rarer than we think.
Yeah.
Or maybe civilizations tend to destroy themselves before they invent interstellar travel.
Yes, this is the great filter theory.
Yes, I've got a theory as well. It's called the Great Cluely theory. And that is that the aliens, maybe they just can't be asked. Maybe they've, got social media, they've got TikTok, and, no one can be bothered inventing anything anymore. Well, I'd just rather look at my screen, thanks.
Yeah.
Why go explore anything? I can just watch clips of cats on my phone.
Yeah.
Maybe our technology is too primitive to detect the aliens, or we're looking in the wrong direction. Maybe Earth is just a fluke. Maybe we are the first intelligent life ever to have existed. I mean, someone has to be the first.
Yeah. That's
right?
a bit of a worry, though, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, that we're just like the beta version.
This is as good as it gets for the universe.
Or maybe we're the last. I mean, someone has to be the last as well. Maybe all the others have killed themselves off and we're just the final hope. Or maybe, just maybe, we don't have our heads around the concept of what intelligent life actually is.
Yeah.
Because we assume that life will be like us, right?
Yes.
If you watch Star Trek, you think alien life is fundamentally humanoid. Two arms, 2 legs.
About 6 foot tall.
Cornish pasties stuck on your forehead.
Yep.
If you watch Doctor Who, it's a man in a rubber suit or someone waggling a sink plunger and an egg whisk at you.
Yeah, but even that is kind of roughly eye to eye with a human. As weird as a Dalek looks.
Yes.
It could get through a doorway.
Yes, just can't go up the stairs.
Yeah.
But what if alien intelligence is something entirely different? What if it isn't even biological? What if it is post-biological? Maybe all the time we've been looking for evidence of the wrong thing. There is a chap. He's NASA's former chief historian.
Yeah.
And in 2003, he published a paper in the International Journal of Astrobiology describing how, unlike humans, right, humans are born, we make mistakes, we have kids. No, I didn't mean...
Sometimes.
I didn't mean... Oops.
Don't edit that pause out.
But, during the course of your life, you can make mistakes and you can have kids. And eventually you die. And then your kids, they make similar mistakes over and over again. And
no matter what you tell them.
Yes. Whereas an advanced AI is more cumulative, right? It passes on its knowledge and wisdom. You wouldn't get rid of information and experience. You would pass it on in an effective fashion, the wisdom onto the next generation of devices. We don't really do that as humans. So if billions of years have gone by, then an extraterrestrial AI intelligence could be really freaking well developed. It could be really, really advanced.
Up to like version 3.
It could be higher than that.
Yeah.
3.11 rather than... No, hang on a minute. Rather than the old version 3.9. Right? It could. Let's hope they've sorted out the version numbers at the very least.
Maybe it's a 1.7 trillion or something.
I'm not saying that humans haven't developed, right? Because we have, and we have evolved.
We do pass information on quite successfully from one generation to the next.
Do we?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
Maybe you are with your kids, Mark. I'm not sure that I am. But what is true is that we no longer need to be amongst the fittest to survive. But AI won't necessarily have any such limitations on improving itself and becoming smarter. It doesn't require biological evolution, which makes me think that maybe we're being too downbeat about our own abilities. Maybe the truth is that we can become smarter as a species.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that is by augmenting ourselves with something non-organic. Maybe the next part of human evolution is to transition, to shrug off the shackles of human-like intelligence and embrace AI intelligence instead. By the way, none of this refers to podcasts. We don't have to do any of this when it comes to podcasts.
Yeah.
So just as we replace our liver, if your liver goes kaput or your heart goes kaput, right, you can have surgery. You can replace it when it starts packing in. Or our arm, if we lose it in a fight with a crocodile or something. Maybe we should be considering replacing our brains with a Commodore 64. And any civilization worth its salt should have traded in their squishy, carbon-based organic bodies.
Well, hang on. You're making a lot of assumptions there about life.
Well, I'm just thinking, over billions and billions of years, to be more efficient, is that not something which would have been considered? If you're replacing some body parts, why not replace the brain as well? What's so sacred about the human brain? What is so sacred about your brain, Mark, that you're not prepared to replace it?
Are you warming up for something?
We could all be sleek, efficient, silicon-bodied. And if there are other civilizations who've gone through it, remember, space is vast, right? Space is really big.
Yeah.
And so different decisions will have been made amongst different civilizations. And maybe a few of them thought, we'll give that a try. That sounds like a bit of a lark. Let's give it a go. So if civilization has done that, perhaps in order to make it easier for them to take interstellar voyages where you can hibernate for hundreds of millions of years without your body flaking out, how would we possibly recognize them? How would we pick them up with what we're doing at the moment? How would we detect them? How would we understand what motivates them? Would they really be sat on a planet orbiting a sun when they don't need that? When they don't need sunlight? When they don't need a gas to breathe? Might they not be on a space station in deep space, which our telescopes aren't pointing at because we tend to be focused on the stars? Or would they have created, have you heard of Dyson spheres?
I have, yes.
Oh, you're such a nerd, Mark.
So this is where you capture all of the energy from a star by essentially encasing it in something. So your civilization is on the inside wall.
The solar panels go on the inside rather than the outside.
Yeah.
So it's a megastructure encompassing a star, capturing all of its power.
Yeah.
Or as much of it as you can. Absolutely gigantic thing. So if you were an AI intelligence, if you were a robot civilization, and you need power for whatever your purpose is, to play Candy Crush or mine cryptocurrency, maybe you think, well, this is the ultimate power, isn't it? And it's not as though you're denying the sun to anyone else because there's no biological life forms which are requiring it.
Well, not anymore.
Not now you've captured the entire sun. Now, back in 2013, taking this back to Earth, the World Economic Forum, they declared their 5 X factors. This had nothing to do with Simon Cowell or anything like that. These were the things which they said were of such significance, but of unknown consequence to the world. These are truly civilization-changing things. There were things like climate change, for instance, bioengineering, things which just changed the nature of humanity. And in 2013, they said one of them is the discovery of alien life. They said, needs to be addressed now, they said, rather than wait until it happens. Because, if you try and wing it, if you...
That is absolutely what we're going to do, though, isn't it?
It is what we're going to do.
Very much the human way of solving the problem.
But it might be good if you thought about it in advance, just in case. Because imagine you did come into contact with alien life and it were an extraterrestrial AI, what's it going to think of us? Are they already out there, but considering us insignificant and uninteresting? Or would they view us as fuel? And if they did arrive, how do we know that it's us that they'll want to talk to rather than the dolphins or the toasters or the smart toothbrushes? And
or the plants.
Or the plants.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by this thing of the World Economic Forum talking about alien life discovery being this X factor, one of the 5 big things that we need to worry about. And that was back in 2013. So I did some research and I thought, I wonder what they've said since 2013. So I looked through their lists. They haven't mentioned aliens again since. Now, I'm not one to stoke a conspiracy theory.
But you're about to stoke a conspiracy theory.
But I'm interested. Why not? What's changed? Why don't they think alien life discovery would be significant for the world?
When you say they haven't mentioned it since, there are different ways of not mentioning something. Are they not mentioning it while shuffling their feet awkwardly and looking down at the floor?
Or are they attaching a Cornish pasty to their forehead and waving an egg whisk?
Aliens? What aliens? Who brought up aliens?
I want to know, what do they know? And has it already happened?
Well, again, I can direct you to some podcasts that can confirm absolutely it has already happened. So, Graham, what do you think is the most important single thing that humans have ever done? If we look at, because we're looking at things on the big scale today.
Yeah. If
you were going to reduce human history to a single event, innovation, discovery, what would you choose?
I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's the first thought which comes into my head, which is the cheese sandwich. But I mean, the wheel was cool.
Yeah.
The printing press language was quite a big deal, I suppose.
But a lot of people choose the internet. I always think we're slightly biased towards the things that have happened in our lifetime. But the internet does seem quite important.
Yeah.
You could have fire. That's quite useful.
Yeah, and good fun as well.
And soap. There's a good case for soap.
Do we really need soap, Mark?
Soap saves about 1 million lives a year. It's the most important single health innovation that humans have ever made, is the invention of soap.
But if you tread on soap in the shower...
The profit and loss account is still tipped in favour of soap. Anyway, I choose the moon landings because I think the moon landings are extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, but couldn't they have taken a better camera with them?
I think actually that just indicates the technology of the time. I think, no, they couldn't take a better camera with them. That was where our technology was. And with that era of technology, we flung 3 people at the moon, got them there, and then got them back. And then we repeated that several times.
That is very cool. I
think if you're going to talk about the human race and all of the achievements of the human race, being the only species that we know of that has deliberately and consciously left the planet and gone to another planetary body and then returned, I think is extraordinary. And the numbers behind it are extraordinary too. So nothing had created artificial flight, like fixed wing flight, in the entire 5 billion year history of the Earth. And then we had the Wright brothers, and they got a few feet off the ground. And then within 60 years, the furthest we had been from Earth was 800 miles.
Yeah.
So we went from a few feet off the ground to 800 miles in 60 years. The next time we extended that was to 240,000 miles.
I don't know if you've ever thought about just how far away the moon is. It's actually a surprisingly long way away.
It's not the shops down the end of the road, is it?
No.
It's about 240,000 miles. I don't know if you know that.
Sometimes when you draw the Earth and the moon, and you imagine the moon is quite close to the Earth, it's actually a heck of a long way away.
So I read a description of this in a book about the moon landings, which I love. And it was, if you imagine the Earth is a basketball.
Yes.
The furthest we have ever been from the Earth, before the Apollo moon landings, the furthest we had ever got off that basketball was 1 inch. And the next time that we left the Earth, we went to a tennis ball that was 22 feet away.
Yeah, exactly. It's a long way away. Mark, the moon is a long way away.
It is a long way away.
That's what I'm saying.
I choose the moon landings. I think the moon landings are probably the single most important thing that humans have ever done. But recently...
Did they take a cheese sandwich with them? I would like to be the first person to eat a cheese sandwich on the moon, if it hasn't already been done.
But you have to invent a way of getting it inside the helmet first.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
see some sort of cheese sandwich feeding robot inside the helmet with you. Anyway, I think the moon landings are probably the single most important thing that humans have ever done. But recently, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, made the case for another innovation. And he wrote this in a blog post called The Intelligence Age a couple of months ago. I'm going to read you what he wrote, but this is an audio podcast.
Right.
And I can't use his voice for copyright reasons. And he's got interesting things to say, but he's not the most charismatic CEO. Let's put it that way.
Copyright isn't the main reason you're not going to use his voice, is it?
So I'm going to be leaning on our friends at 11 Labs and using a voice called Dr. Von Fusion, just to liven this up.
Oh.
Anyway, in this article, he said,
"Here is one narrow way to look at human history after thousands of years of compounding scientific discovery and technological progress. We have figured out how to melt sand, add some impurities, arrange it with astonishing precision at extraordinarily tiny scale into computer chips, run energy through it, and end up with systems capable of creating increasingly capable artificial intelligence. This may turn out to be the most consequential fact about all of history so far. It is possible that we will have superintelligence in a few thousand days. It may take longer, but I'm confident we'll get there."
And when he talks about melting sand and adding some impurities, he's obviously talking about computer chips. And his contention is that the development of computer chips ultimately leads to the creation of a superintelligence, and that superintelligence will transform humanity for the better. And in the article, he says,
at some point further down the road, AI systems are going to get so good that they help us make better next-generation systems and make scientific progress across the board.
And he goes on to talk about
astounding triumphs.
And he names 3 things that he expects AI to deliver.
All right.
Fixing the climate, establishing a space colony, and the discovery of all of physics.
So, no small thing.
No.
I mean, space colony, I can sort of imagine us getting there anyway. But discovering all of physics, it turns out that that's a really hard problem to crack. We've been a bit stuck on that for several decades now.
We haven't done terribly well at fixing the climate either, have we? In fact, AI has perhaps contributed to the problem to a large extent.
One thing he doesn't mention in that list, actually, is that a super intelligent AI would be able to work on itself.
Right. And that's when things begin to get a little bit scary, because we don't necessarily understand how it's changing itself and the decisions which it's making, because it begins to surpass our own intelligence, doesn't it?
Yes. This is something we talked about in an earlier episode called the singularity, which is the idea that you could be looking at an exponential improvement, and then you can't predict what happens after that. Now, it may be that that's the best thing that's ever happened to humanity, but it might be that that's the worst thing that's ever happened to humanity.
We just don't know. You can't see beyond the horizon.
Exactly. And it's quite astonishing to think that this is something that could happen not in the far-off future, but actually in our lifetimes. It's very possible that a lot of the people listening to this podcast are actually going to be around to see this happen.
Yeah, so he said within thousands of days.
He did.
I think, yeah.
And so I think that he's got a point. If we do succeed in creating a superintelligence, then I could be persuaded that that is even more consequential than the moon landings.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that superintelligence is just around the corner seems to be gathering support. In fact, it seems to me, this is just a personal opinion, but it seems to me as if the industry is seeing something in the work that it's doing behind the scenes and in the rate of progress that we've witnessed over the last few years. And it's now quite confident that we are a few years away from something like an artificial general intelligence.
Right. So can it exceed humans' capability to do just about everything humans can do?
Yes. And so when we talk about superintelligence, it's that sort of AGI and then beyond. And yes, so I think the industry is sort of warming up to this idea and starting to let us know that this is what's coming and we should be expecting this pretty soon. And funnily enough, in just the last week, I found 3 videos that I want to share with you from some important but sober voices, so not Elon Musk, basically. People in the AI field making some quite astonishing near-term predictions. And so to wrap up today, I just want to take you and our listeners on a little journey into where Silicon Valley thinks we're going to be in the next 5 or 6 years.
Right.
So we'll start with Sam Altman, because he wrote the article. So on November the 4th, he spoke to Harry Stebbings of 20VC, and he predicted, very matter-of-factly, that within 5 years, the AGI moment will already have happened.
Actually, I will just say it. I think in 5 years, it looks like we have an unbelievably rapid rate of improvement in technology itself. You know, people are like, man, the AGI moment came and went, whatever. The pace of progress is like totally crazy, and we're discovering all this new stuff, both about AI research and also about all of the rest of science. And that feels like if we could sit here now and look at it, it would seem like it should be very crazy. And then the second part of the prediction is that society itself actually changes surprisingly little.
Oh, so he's saying society's not going to change very much, but big changes are coming in terms of the technology.
Yeah, so he's saying society isn't going to change very much in the next 5 years.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, he's saying society is going to be utterly transformed by AI. But, you know, the arrival of AGI is probably going to be a bit like the arrival of ChatGPT, in that it was a really impressive thing, but then we all just carried on sitting in chairs and eating cheese sandwiches. For a while, at least. And then a few days ago, the CEO of Microsoft AI, Mustafa Suleyman, sat down with podcaster Hala Tahar and said basically the same thing. So he also expects AGI within 5 years. And the video is important for that reason, but I like it because he also gives a great description of what a general intelligence might be able to do. Because I think we get caught between the current reality of ChatGPT, which is a bit, I don't know, for me, it's a bit like a drunk university professor. Like, it's really clever, but it might do something a bit wacky. You're never quite sure which one you're going to get. And then there's this far future version of robots and space colonies.
Yes.
But somewhere between the two, there's an AGI, which is going to change everything.
It would have autonomy. It could act independently of your direct command, essentially. Or you give it a very general command, and it goes off and does all sort of sub-actions that are super complicated, like, maybe even invent a new product and create a website for it and then set up a drop ship for it and then, go and market it and take all the income and then do the accounts and so on. I mean, I think that's kind of plausible in, say, 3 to 5 years. Before 2030, I think we'll definitely have that, and might well be much, much sooner. Could well be like a lot sooner.
So he's saying before 2030 could be much sooner.
Again, he's a sober voice, but he's agreeing with Sam Altman.
Yes, these people aren't like, as you said, they're not crazy cryptocurrency guys or Elon Musk, are they? They are sane.
And then finally, the last of my 3 videos, we come to Eric Schmidt. So the former CEO and chairman of Google, he went to Riyadh for the Future Investment Initiative's 3rd Board of Changemakers. And he predicted that within 5 years, we would have not just AGI, but an AI that can modify its own code. So without saying singularity, he's talking about the singularity.
In the industry, it is believed that somewhere around 5 years, no one knows exactly, the systems will begin to be able to write their own code. That is, they literally will take their code and make it better. And of course, that's recursive. I thought that is essentially a change in slope.
And he goes on to describe something like the first version of superintelligence.
It's reasonable to expect that within 6 to 8 years from now, so 2030, right after that, maybe 2032, the current growth rate, it will be possible to have a single system that is 80 or 90% of the ability of the expert in every field. So 90% of a physicist, 90% of the best physicist, 90% of the best chemist, 90% of the best artist. When you have such a thing, you have a non-human that is effectively smarter than any human, because no human can dominate all of those fields.
So it feels like these people who are all very powerful people in the world of AI are talking with one voice about this just being round the corner.
Exactly.
It feels a little bit like we're being softened up. It's a bit like, how some farmers massage Wagyu cattle?
Yeah, to get the fat nicely marbled through the flesh.
To make it really, really lovely, ready for consumption.
Don't they feed them beer as well?
Yeah.
Do you think this is beer and massages?
That's what I'm wondering. Are we being softened up for this purpose? Moulded into shape, ready for consumption?
I'm going to leave the last word to Eric Schmidt.
There are many, many things that this thing, we don't know what to call it except an AGI, could do. For example, it could analyze cyber threats and develop new ones, or it could protect against them. It could come up with new biological solutions, good ones or bad ones. So there's both a national security component and a worry, but also a notion of a huge step change in human efficiency and productivity. I will assert that we as humans are not ready for the arrival of this. No. We're just not ready for it.
Yeah, I can confirm I'm not ready for this.
Well, as the doomsday clock ticks ever closer to midnight and we move 1 week nearer to our future as pets to the AI singularity, which is looking like it's a few weeks away now, that just about wraps up the show for this week. And who knows?
Maybe forever.
If you enjoy the show, you may be wondering how you can help us. Well, you could build a rocket so we could escape the planet. You could start the resistance. Or you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Podchaser. We love that. But what really helps, just make sure to follow the show and please tell your friends. Tell your friends you really like the AI fix.
And don't forget to check us out on our website, theaifix.show, or you can follow us on Twitter at the AI Fix.
So until next time, from me, Mark Stockley.
And me, Graham Cluley.
Goodbye.
Cheerio. Bye-bye.
The AI Fix, it tunes you in to stories where our future...
Are you familiar with the Kardashev scale, by the way?
No.
You give a civilization a type based on how much energy it can capture.
We won't survive. The AI Fix...
Kardashev scale. Not to be confused with
Kardashians.
Kardashian. That is the first thing which came up on Google.
The AI Fix, a future surreal.